In part 3 of this introduction to the 1934 drawing, I'm going to be showing animal forms concealed within its composition. In this image, we see the profile of Olga. If you look closely at her nostril, you'll notice that it's in the form of a little snail with its antenna and the shell. This is a visually poetic type of image. Picasso was famous for this kind of thing. The fleshy mucosal part of the snail's flesh is very similar to snot. Picasso is playfully making this association, but the snail is also another one of these death symbols. It's an unpleasant creature. There is this association with the underworld and darkness and damp, dark places and things. Now, we've already seen the impression of an owl sitting on the shoulder of the left-hand figure, Marie-Thérèse Walter. There's another hidden owl within the face of Olga, the figure on the right of the drawing. When her face is inverted, you get a very beautiful impression hidden in the light tones. Here we see a couple of photographs of Picasso with owls. He kept owls as pets. The symbolic association of the owl is a very ancient one. It goes as far back as the goddess Athena. It also represents, apart from wisdom, is a sort of death symbol. In the image on the left, we see a rather remarkable conjunction of symbols. The previously described U-shaped darts symbolizing the horns of a bull, consistent with descriptions in Picasso's poetry and writings of the time. Marie-Thérèse becomes the target of obscene insults and injury, symbolized by these darts, which are being cast at her from Olga, who has a similar cache of darts hidden behind her back. Now they then go on to form the legs of a terrible-looking spider that seems to be clambering up her shoulder. Now it could be, however, that the owl, in a type of image magic, is also a protective symbol, because Picasso identified with the Homeric hero Odysseus. We find a lot of references to this in Picasso's art. Odysseus's protective goddess was, of course, Athena. She was the one who was always gunning for Odysseus, and she gets him through. Now, the death theme is intimately associated with the Spanish bullfight. We've already seen within the drawing numerous silhouette images, impressions of bulls, including a large profile of a bull and the concealed impression of Picasso being crucified on the horse. In this slide, we can see a fish swimming, as it were, through the composition in the vicinity of Olga. Note the tail and the side fin and the wide open mouth and eye. This characteristic of the wide open mouth is present in some of the hidden images of fish in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. Similarly, we get some very violent looking fish in the Three Dancers. In Picasso's writings and poetry of the 1930s, he often uses aquatic symbolism in his descriptions of Olga. These are personal poems and so on. One can only guess as to the deeper associations in his mind. Please note the number 13 in the central upper register, the number of the death card in the tarot. The aquatic symbolism is something very central in Picasso's art. He'll identify time and time again with the character of a fisherman, and this goes way back to his early times in Malaga. Picasso confuses the ideas of birds and fish, a chicken type bird with a little fish symbol above its head, and we see a bird upon a table with a fish concealed within it. And here we see the same confusion of the two, a fish body concealed in the forearm and a bird's body. This seems to originate with an 1892 avant-garde ballet by the composer Erik Satie. Satie was a great influence on Picasso, one of the most important but least well known. This symbol is another death symbol because it arises in the ballet in the final scene, which is a scene of crucifixion. Uspud is being crucified. Up from the earth rise all kinds of extraordinary creatures, including fish bodies with the head and wings of birds. Picasso had experimented with numerous birds of prey when he was preparing Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, a very significant feature. It's repeated in a lot of Picasso's work, this idea of a bird with a long beak or a sharp beak. And so there seems to be a consistency in these birds. Now, this is one of the deeper occult images. It can be seen laterally along the right-hand edge of the 1934 drawing. What it seems to suggest is the image of a dog that relates back also to Erik Satie's 1892 ballet, Uspud. But it also has very strong suggestive characteristics relating it to the ancient Egyptian god Anubis, the dog-formed god who transports souls after their death. It is immediately next to this impression of Picasso's wife. She has a half moon above her head in the form of the bull's horns. This is the horned headdress of the goddess Isis. Isis and Anubis were companion gods. Their task was to transport the souls of the recently dead to the afterlife. They resemble very closely Picasso's principal alter ego, the god Mercury, who had a similar task. His job was to take the souls of the recently dead to the underworld. What we find in the 1934 drawing is Picasso continuing this fascination with presenting with an array of concealed animal forms, fish, birds, and so on. He demonstrated this to an extraordinary degree in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, and he continues it to some extent in the Three Dancers, and it continues in Guernica. But the 1934 drawing is remarkable because it does bring together the whole range of Picasso's interests. He's couched these animal forms in a sort of meaningful frame of reference, ranging from ancient sources right through to modern avant-garde sources. After the 1934 drawing, Picasso employed much of the same iconography in Guernica. What we get are crucifixion elements, the bullfight theme, the woman with the lamp. There are concealed animals in Guernica, fish and birds, which I've explained in the video. Consistent, similar sets of imagery taken directly from the 1934 drawing and then embodied into the composition of Guernica. If we go back to 1925, we find that the Three Dancers employs the same set of themes, and then prior to that, in 1907, in Les Demoiselles d'Avignon,